Okay, so hi everyone. So what we're doing today is we're trying to give um, people who are interested in the organizational psychology role at DeepThought a bit of a sneak peek into what it actually looks like to work as an organizational psychologist at DeepThought, what our day-to-day looks like, and essentially what does an organizational psychologist do in an organization, in a startup environment, because a lot of psychology students they have a very skewed perception of organizational psychology, right? Clinical psychology is often seen as the be all end all of psychology. And in a lot of institutions, there may not be a very realistic understanding of what it actually means to be in the field of organizational psychology. So, we're just going to discuss our own experiences with the same and hopefully clarify any doubts that any candidates might have and give them some realistic expectations to have from the role. So, just to get started with it, would you guys like to talk about, how you got into deep thought and how many months has it been since you've been here? What made you apply for the role at Deep Thought?
Sure. So I'll start. Hi, everyone, first. And coming into Deep Thought was a surprise for me as well. I was just going through internshala and I went through the profile of the of research intern, organizational research intern, and I am interested in research. So that's how I got into DT. But initially, the even the selection process, it was so interesting in itself. I was like, okay, what after this? What after this? So I was so intrigued by the process in itself. And after the 3 days, and when I did the observation period, I knew like this is something that's interesting and very different than what I have seen so far. And that's how the journey of deep thought started. And it's been 7 months and I'm still here and it's fun. I would say it's fun.
Okay, thank you, Pratibha. Sanjeevni, do you want to go in next?
Yeah. So hi everyone. And so first of all, I'll start with how I got into DT. So I was also just like Pratibha going through internshala, and I was looking for an internship related to research as well because I was more interested in learning more about it because I had not been into a lot of research before. So while going through it, I was like, okay, this sounds interesting. Okay, and organizational psychology, my view was also a bit flawed. So I was like, maybe this will give me a new perspective, something new to learn. So I was willing to try, open to learn. And that's how I applied. And when I started with the first round, I was like, okay, this seems, I can do this. I can apply, my understanding of psychology and all to it. But by when I came to the second round and it got a bit technical, I faced a little bit of self-doubt and I was like, really, do I really want to do this? Am I, suited for this? But I fought through. I was like, if I don't give it a chance, what is the point? Will this how I learn if I don't even, try once? I don't give myself the opportunity to. And well, yeah, here I am. I completed all the rounds and I'm still new. It's literally my second month now. So learning every day. Yeah.
Yeah, but you're already a team leader in your second month, no? I think you became a micro leader as soon as you joined. I
In
think
my
you,
second week,
yeah, yeah, you.
in my
So
second week, I became a
the
microtutor.
the thing about Sanjeevni is Pratibha, even before she was officially onboarded, she was working with observers. While she was an
Yeah.
observer herself,
On
she
my
was
day
guiding other
four of
observers.
observation, on my day four of observation, I was guiding the other observers. So I was like, okay.
She's from the star recruitment team, na? They were those who recruited them psychology. You're from
Yeah,
those,
yeah.
na?
She's already been through multiple teams, I think, in the 2 months. I think she was in the Hacking Growth Relationships Lab, connecting with other candidates. She
Yeah.
was also in Inclusion Lab, working
Inclusion.
with observers, working with high need learners. So, quite a lot for someone who's been here for
Just
just
a
two
month.
months. Quite a
Yeah.
lot. But yeah, so I think Pratibha and I, we joined around the same time. I think I was in my third year. I was almost finishing up with my third year of bachelor's, and Again, same. So I had already done a few internships in different setups, right? Content writing, some clinical work and all. And I wanted more research experience. Like I wanted to do something more research oriented. So I also applied through internshala. I went through the first round, and then the second round for us back then, I think it was the listening assignment. We watched this video of Mr. Hariharan Anand and one video by Jim Collins where he was talking about Peter Drucker. And that was the first time I was even introduced to those concepts because the way we've studied leadership and everything has been very mechanical. Like, okay, you have all these theories of leadership, these authors, these are the definitions, but there wasn't a lot of emphasis on the real world application of it, what it looks like to be a leader, right? And then I watched that video of Jim Collins, and he was talking about like level 5 leader, and about the one thing that stood out to me the most back then was I think in that video he said how you shouldn't try to survive, you should try to create value. If you're able to create value, if you're able to contribute, you will thrive anyway. You wouldn't have to worry about surviving. For me, I think that was a pretty big thing because a lot of times, especially when you're in the field of psychology, you're often told, right, that oh, it's not a field where there's a lot of growth, career scope. Ultimately, it's seen as the staged thing. You do a bachelor's, you do a master's, you do an MPhil, you become a therapist, you have clients. So the fact that there are other alternative avenues, that was really interesting to me. And yeah, just like Pratibha, I think it's my seventh or eighth month. And yeah, since then I've been in many teams and it's been really fun overall for me as well. I think I've learned quite a lot. If I actually try to think about what all I've learned, I think it would be really hard to actually uh, communicate it in a very structured manner. So, okay, that aside, so, okay, now since all three of us are currently working in very different teams and working on very different projects, what does a typical day look like for you? And how does your background in psychology play into it? Anyone who
So
would
for
like to
me,
go first? Yeah.
yeah, sure. So I'm currently working in the Winning Culture Lab. I'm handling the team, and the Winning Culture Lab, as the name said, it's about in have a winning culture in the organization where everyone, every single person in the ecosystem understands the culture and also understand the impact that they can create. So this, I would say, is very and in all aspects similar to what we do in psychology: the humbleness, the kindness, the compassion, the need to strive, the need to be better, the drive for motivation, everything, and all the psychology concepts that I have studied so far, not just related to OB, everything, even clinical, counseling, social, everything. I am using all those things here because it's not just about creating a system, it's also about understanding the person for whom you're creating the system. And also, after that, understanding if it's working for them or not. So each and every project, not just if it's related to psychology, if it's related to some technical concepts as well, you focus on UI and UX, and that is directly related to psychology. How would you else, how other than psychology, you'll understand a person, understand their mindset, what they like, what they don't like. So, yeah, so in that manner, everything that I'm currently doing is related to psychology, and we're coming up with many new projects. Two of the main projects that we're working on is ticketing system, to have a structured system where everything is aligned and people have a space where they can, put forward their concerns, their bottlenecks. And so it's not just about creating a sheet and okay, like this is the space where you can do it. We want to make them feel safe. We want to make them feel heard as well. So yeah, in all manner, this is all about psychology.
Well, I think, like as Pratibha clearly mentioned, I feel even if you can't see it, psychology is there, right? Even if we don't establish the connection that, okay, here is where we're using psychology, if you think about it, we are. Okay. So right now I am working with the DT Valley Lab. Okay. So basically this entire process, the entire selection process of how candidates, go through the entire 4-step selection process, they get to the observation. This all like the DT Valley Lab designs the funnel, right? So that the candidates easily, move through those processes, right? And move to the observation and join us at DT, right? To put it in simple words. Now this might seem like, okay, this is a set procedure. Where is psychology here, right? They're just doing those tasks and submitting it and moving on, right? But here is where psychology comes in. Right, like now what happens while going through these steps? Many people, they face self-doubt like I did, right? They drop off. They're like, no, it's too much, I can't do this. They get frustrated, they drop off. Now what concept comes here, right? They need some support, they need some guidance, and who better to provide that guidance than people who know concepts of psychology, right? So it is not just talking to them in a way that you instruct them with the process that, okay, this is how it's done, you need to do this, right? But actually listen to what they're facing, right? Understand it well, empathize with what they're feeling, what they're going through, and guide them through it. It's not that we are telling them what they have to do, but we're helping them find out how they can do it and, go forward with it. So, even if I don't explain the concepts we're using here, I think it's very well evident how psychology plays a role. Yeah.
Even when you're talking to them, right, identifying who would be a good fit in this ecosystem, who would not be a good fit, a lot of behavioral psychology comes in there as well, understanding their aspirations and motivations, what they're looking for in their career.
Yeah, and just by listening to their tone, like the entire non-verbal cues that we talk about, right? But even when we're talking to them, you can easily, understand that even through a call, right? So
Yeah,
all the behavioral part also plays a role.
Yeah, exactly. Like you mentioned about Jim Collins, the 5 levels of the leadership. That's all about psychology. That's about emotional regulation and all of that. And leadership in itself is just a huge concept that is under psychology.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, for me, currently I'm working with the OD lab, Organizational Development Lab. We're primarily more focused on the SMB side of things, the business owner side of things, right? We're figuring out ways to communicate with them, to convey what we do to them in a way that feels relatable for them, engaging for them. Because at times it can be a bit of an abstract idea, right? Mentoring um, talent, identifying and nurturing talent, putting that talent in innovation environments where it can help businesses grow. So, conveying that idea effectively, conveying the messaging effectively to business owners so that they can, you know, so that they're interested in the kind of work that we're doing. So, for me, it's currently more on the marketing psychology and social engineering psychology side of things. So that is what I am currently working on. But more than that, I think the most that psychology comes into the picture for me is while working with people, irrespective of which team it is. Every single time when you work with a new team of people, you work on a new project, you have to sort of understand your team members really well, understand what they're really good at, figure out ways of encouraging them, figure out ways of enabling them, more importantly, so that they don't really need you to rely on as a team leader or as a micro leader. They're able to connect with the work that they're doing and they're able to execute it really, really well. So I think for me, that has been the most important and also the most fun part of things, working with different teams on different projects and figuring out what will work, what approach will work. More, do I need to be more involved, less involved? The mechanics of it, working with different people. So I think that is what most of my day to day goes in, working with different teams, helping them resolve whatever bottlenecks they're facing, figuring out the next steps in whatever project we're working on, even more importantly, tracking the progress of those projects, ensuring that things are going in the right direction. And if they're not, then becoming aware of it before it's too late, right? To make sure things can come back on the right track. So, yeah, that has been my role here, my work here so far in the last few months. That brings me to another question for all of us. What differences have you noticed in your time here compared to, let's say, any other internship that you might have worked on, or if you have friends who are interning in different setups, not just organizational setups, but any setup. So, what differences have you noticed in your experiences compared to their experiences?
Okay, I'd go. So I have also, earlier interned in different settings, right? And I right now also, if I look at my friends, they're also interning at different places. So one thing that, you know, the major difference that I see in myself, okay, I'll not talk about others, in myself, I'll say, is that earlier I used to be less, um, like I did not have that zeal to get to the depth of something, right? If I have some work, I'll complete that work and I'll move on, right? But when I started working at Deep Thought, after that, it has become okay. I'm working at this. Why am I doing this? Then I go to that. Then something or the other just keeps uncovering itself, and it might feel to a person who's getting to know about this, that okay, that's a lot. That might get overwhelming, right? But it's actually sort of kind of fun, right? Because you're getting to learn things which you never even thought that you would touch upon, right? So, one thing I would say that I have started going more into details. I did not used to appreciate the details behind things, right? But I appreciate those more now.
So for me, I always knew like this is something I wanted, the culture that is here. I just didn't know how to put it into words. And the organizations or the or the hospitals, like for clinical settings I've worked in, are very different, of course. This kind of atmosphere I didn't get there. So I was trying to find something. I knew that I'm looking for something. I just didn't know what until I got here. So the experimentation, the leadership, that openness about empathy and the work, and that openness about making mistakes, accepting them, working on them. So that's something that's new here, and that constant, I won't say competitiveness, that constant, that need to be better. Like if I look back from 1 week past now, I'll be like, okay, this is something that I didn't know then. I know it right now. So that's something that excites me a lot, because in lots of internships I've done, but this is different. This is not something I got there. I was working on some things. If I didn't do it right, they'll give me a feedback, like work upon it. And mostly in interviews, like you get sometimes nervous, you know the answer, but you're not able to say it. And they'll take that as a marking, okay, this person does not know nothing, which is not true in fact. So that acceptance about that the person can make mistakes, and it's a platform where you can grow, irrespective of the mistakes, but also it's more about like working upon them and improving. That's something that not most of the organization that I have worked in follow that approach. So that's something that I see here a lot, and which is interesting. And that openness about interns, ki, come here, you have that platform, brainstorm, do something what you want. We are here to mentor you, to support you, to create your own systems. That's interesting. And when you actually end up creating something, and when you look back, okay, where we started and now this is where we are. So that gives a lots of confidence and also happiness.
Yeah, and also I feel like at other places wherever might have interned, it's like the work, the type of learnings are very streamlined to one area, right? If we go to a hospital setting, we won't get to try out new things, and it's a certain structure that we always have to follow, right? We cannot sway anywhere from that format. But working at DT, I feel it gives you that autonomy, right? to take your own decisions and make your own way, right? And I feel that autonomy is really important whenever we're going through life and doing anything at all, right? Making our own decisions about things and, not having to follow certain rules to do things. So, yeah.
I think the autonomy part, I would say that's there in some extent. They have certain things in their mind and they would want you to do, but it's not about like there's some like my based on my experience, I did get to learn a lot there as well. They are good, but the approach, it's about the approach that fits well for you. So not everyone can survive in every atmosphere or every culture. Of course, you have to figure it out. So if you have that. Strive to be better, that I want to see myself grow, I want to see where I was last week, where I'm last month or last week, and where I am right now. Or this is something that sounds interesting, okay, let's figure it out. This is just on paper, how can I put it into a system? Let's figure it out. So that excitement, if that's there, then this is the best platform or the culture that you can be in.
I do agree with Pratibha. I mean, some people do prefer more, streamlined, structured environments, work environments, internship environments where they have a very specific role, a very specific set of responsibilities, and they only work on that. They're given very specific guidelines of how to execute it, and they execute it, and then, they log out and then they come back the next day. But for me, that never really worked because I used to get bored really easily. Like I've done a lot of other internships and I execute the tasks well, I do it well, but I get bored very easily. If there is not a lot for me to, if there's not a lot to stimulate me intellectually, I need that. And even in some like clinical psychology internships, right, where you're an observer, for example, you're observing a session, you're observing a client session. I realized very quickly that that might not be for me because I'm more of a doer. I can't sit and observe. I need something to do. I need something to channel my attention and energy into. So, and I also get really irked by the idea of just being another like cog wheel in a machine, right? Like you're doing something and then someone else is doing something, and there's like this huge hierarchy, and you can never tell if what you're actually doing is it even making some impact in the grand scheme of things, or are you just, performing like a small block of the puzzle? I wanted to do things where I can actually see the impact of it. Okay, this is how my work is contributing to the grand scheme of things. This is how my work fits into the picture. So I really enjoy that. I really enjoy the autonomy of knowing, okay, this is the problem statement, this is the project. Now it's up to me to figure out how I want to go about it. And I have people I can reach out to if I need help, but they're not there to sort of micromanage me. They have faith in my abilities. I have faith in my abilities. And if I need help, I know when to go and seek help and support. So that for me makes for a really, really good, I wouldn't even call it an internship environment. I would call it work environment because it has never really felt like an internship, if I'm being really honest. I don't think we even call each other interns at this point.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
not an internship.
Yeah.
You're doing meaningful work, right? There's no, say, hierarchy as such, where you're just someone working on a small piece of the puzzle. So that for me has been really interesting, but I do agree with Pratibha that it may or may not work for everyone. Some people
Yeah,
may
yeah.
get overwhelmed by the responsibility of it all and by the weight of it all, right? That, okay, everything I do, it really, really affects every other member in my team. So, am I ready for that kind of responsibility? And some people just want a comfortable job. And I mean, that is okay. But then they would probably not be very satisfied in this environment because we're constantly expecting each other to go above and beyond and to find something we're really passionate about and to, execute it to the best of our abilities.
Yeah, it's all about finding the right opportunity for you, right? And it's different for everyone. So,
Makes sense. Yeah. Okay. Um, right. Okay, I think this would be interesting. So, what is something about organizational psychology that you did not know before you joined Deep Thought?
For me, I had no exposure to OB before this. So I came here without any expectation or without any predetermined things in my mind. And once I come here, then only I knew, okay, this is how things work here, and this is what OB actually is than what I read on paper. It's not about you just go there and talk about leadership. You actually engage in roles and try to show it through the work. So that's there. Plus, also, what was the question again?
Yeah, that was it. What's something new about organizational psychology that you learned after joining?
So everything, honestly.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I would totally agree to that because as someone coming with, that process that, okay, I don't know what organizational psychology is. And if I have heard about it, I've only heard that, okay, it might be a little too boring, right? Because whenever you think of psychology, people just start thinking about the clinical side of it, the abnormal part of it, right? You don't actually see how we apply it day to day in our organizations, at home even, right? So so I came with a blank slate. I was like, I have no opinions. I need to learn more. And when I got here, I got to understand that it's there in every team, right? Every project you work on, you get to learn something new about organizational behavior and how organizational psychology works. So yeah,
Yeah,
it
and
would
to
be
add
every.
to that, we don't even get that many opportunities. If you're a
Yeah.
graduate student, you don't have that many opportunities in both the fields, whether it's clinical, OB, or any other field. But to get this kind of opportunity where it's not just an internship, you're actually working and making an impact, that's rare to find. So that's why when I came here, I was not very inclined towards OB, but after coming here, when I see how things work, when I see how much impact I can make, that's when I started realizing that this is a field with lots of impact that can be created.
Yeah, I think what Sanjeevni said, right, about how people are more drawn to clinical because of the mental disorders aspect of it all. I feel like in reality, if we think about it, people with very severe mental disorders, that's a small percentage. But there is such a wide set of population that is under constant stress and anxiety because of their workplaces. I feel like for a lot of people, their work is something that contributes the most to their day-to-day stress, either because they're in roles that they don't really align with, or because they are in organizational cultures that are not really catering to their well-being and are extremely pressured without having that human balance and empathy. So if I mean, if I really think about it, I feel like organizations are the biggest playground for interventions, right, to promote actual mass level impact when it comes to improving mental well-being and when it comes to helping people feel more productive and satisfied with their lives in general, because your career and your professional life makes up such a huge part of your entire life, and it influences how you feel even outside your work. It influences how you are with your family and your friends and just your overall quality of life. So there is a lot in the organizational psychology side of things. There's a lot of scope that is currently untapped because it's not being communicated that well. When I applied initially, like Pratibha, I also applied because I was interested in research. So the OD or organizational side of things, I did not give it a lot of thought because again, I did not have a lot of clarity about it, and for me, in my head, organizational psychology was always associated with HR, human resources, and that in itself does not have a really good reputation for different reasons. Again, because of how it is portrayed and because of lack of understanding of what good HR is like or of what a good human resource professional is supposed to, do in an organization. So I think a lot of misconceptions got cleared for me while working with teams. And one thing that really helped is that I was not, seeing it in terms of a particular role. Does this particular project align with my role or not? Or is this particular task role aligned or not? It was more about, okay, this is something I'm working on. How do I, want to work on this? How do I want to execute it in the best way? Who are the people I'm working with? So, yeah, I think it's been a fairly interesting experience overall, learning about that. And okay, so connecting to that, what would you say is one challenge you faced in this role? Something that you've encountered that you maybe overcame or you're in the process of overcoming?
I think the biggest challenge and the biggest lesson also, I would say, is whenever you're creating something, whether it's a system, whether it's a task or project, anything, it's important to understand the persona. It's very important to understand who are the stakeholders. And when you say understanding them, like putting yourself in their shoes and then think from their perspective. And it may sound easy, but when you actually work on a project, this is the toughest or the most important thing that you can work on. Like we were working on the workflows and we've already done 2 or 3 iteration, and it's mainly because of the persona thing, because it's a bit difficult for us to figure that out. So we may undermine this, but this is one of the most important things while working on any project, whether it's related to psychology, whether it's related to tech, or whether it's a combination of multiple things. So figuring that out is most important. And once you have that answer of the whys, what's in house, that's like half of your problem is already done. Then you just need to create that system. So that's something that's a challenge, or something that the biggest lesson that I've also learned.
Thank you for
Okay.
sharing that, Pratibha. Yes, Sanjeevni.
Uh, so for me, I think it would be that whenever I'm confronted with very technical terms, right, I get a little set aback, right? And I'm like, okay, what's that? That is something new and I don't know anything about it. And then I start thinking that, but how is psychology related to this, right? And after, like getting to know more about the technical stuff after joining DT, so that is one thing that I've gotten to know, that earlier I I might still have those challenges. I'm working on it every day. That whenever I face something technical, I kind of have a little bit of self doubt that maybe, I don't know this well and I don't know if I'll be able to comprehend it better. But then now I have started thinking of it in a more like, how can I learn about this way, right? So how can I, use and understand it and then use my own cognitive processes to figure it out better, right? Not learn it in the exact technical terms there are, right? The exact codes there are, but try to understand it through my own ways, right? So yeah, that would be it.
Makes sense. I think for me, it's so I tend to go in one of two ways. Either I jump in too quickly in trying to find a solution for something, or I strategize too much instead of actually doing something about it, right? So it's either completely narrow, focused execution, or it's complete analysis paralysis where you're going from tangent to tangent instead of actually executing something. So finding that balance between, understanding, okay, is this a priority? By when do we need to, do this? Why do we need to do this? How much time and effort should we ideally invest in this? What direction of time and effort investment should we be taking? Because sometimes you're thinking about it, you're brainstorming, but you're brainstorming in the wrong direction altogether, which is what Pratibha also mentioned. You're doing things, you're reiterating over and over and over, but you're not able to get into the other person's shoes. You're not able to see it from the perspective of your stakeholder or whichever persona you're actually doing that thing for. So I think those have been the most major things for me. Being able to empathize with the end user, seeing things from their perspective, and at the same time, channeling my efforts in the right direction so that I'm not doing something which is completely unfounded in the actual reality. And I'm also not, getting trapped into too much analysis and brainstorming, which I think we often tend to do that, especially as psychology students. Okay, let's bring everything into the picture. Let's try to connect everything, come up with a diagnosis and all. So finding that balance is something I'm continuously working on. Um, okay, so just to wrap up, I think we've already discussed this, but what is one, advice of sorts you'd want to give to anyone applying for the same role? Like, what is one thing you'd want to tell them so that they're really able to understand if this role is for them or not?
Okay, I think if I think of it in a way that I am talking to myself before I was applying, right? So I would like to say that if you're someone who wants to get out of their comfort zone, right? You don't want to stay fixed at one place, and you have that zeal, you have that voice inside you telling you every day that just go explore. There is so much out there to learn and get to know more about. And don't just stick to your preconceived notions about something, right? Actually get your hands dirty, right? And understand what it is. So if you already think that you know what organizational psychology is, maybe you don't, or maybe you do. So how would you know? How would you know if you don't try it out, right? So yeah, that is just what I would say. That question yourself, be curious about it. That's all.
Thank you, Sanjeev.
I think she summed it up in a really beautiful way. That's all I would also like to add. If you want to be someone who creates an impact in a sense, who can transform the organization, who can create cultures within the organization, along with like putting yourself out of your comfort zone, trying out things and not just sticking to one sort of notion. This is the place and you can try it out, and there's a lot to learn. Like even in general in psychology, you can't just stick with one notion, you can't just stick with one belief, because you're gonna keep moving and keep meeting new people, and you just can't stick to it. And even in organization, even though you think, okay, I've done something, I've created something, and that's gonna stick for years, no, you never know who's the next cycle of people that's coming in and what are the new challenges that are coming with that. So until and unless you get into it, again, like Sanjeevni said, get your hands dirty, you won't know.
Thank you, Pratibha. I think for me, it would be if you're someone who really, really enjoys having autonomy, and if you're someone who's very ambitious, right? You don't want to be in, and you get bored very easily. I feel that is another thing. And if you find genuine satisfaction in solving problems for people, not only in the traditional sense of, listening to them, empathizing with them, but actually taking action, actually helping them brainstorm through things and helping them solve those problems and work in teams and just grow in your career essentially. I think that is the crux of it. If you're someone who really, really likes the idea of growing in your career, then it's something that you might want to try out, irrespective of, the process ahead, your trajectory ahead. You will definitely get something out of it irrespective of how far ahead you go in it. It's not going to be something that you'll regret. Ultimately, you'll get something valuable out of it in terms of learning. Right. I think with that we can end this unless anyone else has anything else to add or no. Okay. All right. Thank you so much.